Chapter 34, Hamwell Airfield. "Quick as you like, Alf," said the skipper from the bridge. "Let's get going. Haul that rope in. We don't need any more passengers, do we, love?" When young Constable Spencer saw that the tugboat was already a yard or so from the quay, he ran to the water's edge, blowing his whistle. "Hey, wait for me," he said, and blew another shrill whistle. But Alf had hauled up the tug's gangplank, and the little boat was already further than jumping distance from the quay. "Hey, did you hear me? Sergeant's orders. You got to wait for me," shouted Spencer. But the skipper was on the bridge, steering the boat out into the channel, and couldn't or wouldn't hear. Ida felt the power of the tugboat underneath her, pushing through the water like 20 laundry vans put together. The police van had started up its engine too and was swerving across the quay. Constable Spencer ran after it. The passenger door opened and an arm yanked him into the cab. Still hiding behind Alf, Ida watched them disappear out of the docks. "Alf, bring that young lady up to the bridge." "Aye, aye, Skip." You could hear that Alf's mouth was only just getting used to the new words. "Here, take this." Alf took off his new work jacket and draped it round Ida's shoulders. "Thank you," said Ida, trying not to catch Alf's eye. Then she followed him up the steps of the bridge. Even though Southampton water was really only a very wide river, when the boat was in the navigation channel, the wind was much colder. It froze Ida's ears and made her head hurt. But though Alf's new jacket was a bit big, it was warm, and she was really glad of it. In the top cabin, which Alf and the skipper kept referring to as the bridge, the skipper stood at a wooden wheel, a bit like a steering wheel, but the spokes stuck out from the rim. "Let's crank her up a bit, shall we? What d'you say to 13 knots? Ida didn't have any idea what he was talking about, so the only answer she could give was an unsure yes. The engine rumbled, the single funnel puffed out a cloud of smoke, and Ida felt the boat thrust forward as 2 white tail feathers of foam spewed out behind. She was aware of Alf watching her look around. "That's the stern," he said, "and the front's the bow." He wasn't really as much of a show-off as she used to think he was. "Alf, lad, come and take the wheel for this stretch." Alf coloured like the last flush of red before the sun goes down. The skipper took a tin of baccy from his trouser pocket and refilled his pipe. Ida stood next to Alf and tried to imagine herself at the wheel of a boat instead of a car. They sped through the gap between the Monte Olivia and the shore, a shingle beach, a huge blanket of snow, and behind that an even huger building. "The military hospital." The skipper waggled his pipe at the enormous place, where the morning sun was only just peeking over with a pinkish glow. "Had a short spell in there myself. I was one of the lucky ones, so they told me." He took a long, thoughtful suck on his pipe. Alf was too busy concentrating on steering the boat to say anything. Ida remembered her dad, another lucky one, and suddenly felt angry that he wasn't there when the skipper was. If he had been, she wouldn't be in this desperate situation. Oh, please, please let her be in time. The sky above was a crisp blue and clear as crystal. Had Uncle Arthur and Bonnie already gone, never to be seen again? A pain in Ida's chest tightened and her fist clenched with it. She had to be there in time to get Bonnie, her family, her only family. She didn't want to be alone. She needed her sister. She mustn't fail Mum again. "Well, here we are. Alf, my lad, you done well." The pipe bounced on the skipper's lip as he gently took the wheel from Alf. Alf stepped back, smiled at Ida, and breathed a long sigh of steamy breath. The skipper steered the boat alongside a little wooden jetty. It looked a bit flimsy, and it too was covered in a thick white blanket of snow that sparkled in the morning sun. Just a tiny bit of Ida was excited about being the first to walk on it. But when she saw what was in the distance, her head lurched, and she wished she could fly over the snowy jetty and the snowy airfield to the hangar where a man in a black shirt and grey trousers was sliding open the doors of a huge shed. In the widening gap, Ida could see the propeller of a small plane and an unmistakably tall, black-coated, peak-capped Uncle Arthur. Ida scrambled over the side of the boat before the skipper or Alf could stop her. She ran along the jetty. It bounced under her pounding feet, sending flurries of snow into the water. At the end of the jetty, she jumped into the soft white blanket covering the airfield. The new snow creaked beneath her feet, and the weak winter sun shone in her eyes. It could have been the height of summer for all she cared. Alf's coat flapped open. Oh no, she still had Alf's coat, but she couldn't stop to take it back now. Ida, wait! Alf was waving at Ida from the end of the jetty. I'm sorry, I've still got your jacket, she said. No, don't worry about that. We've got to take the boat back to the docks. There's a new liner waiting for us. The skipper was still sucking on his pipe on the deck. Ida cupped her hands round her mouth. Thank you very much, for everything. You've been wonderful. Alf looked down but raised his arm in a last wave goodbye. Good luck, Ida. Was he embarrassed? If he was sweet on her, she couldn't decide if she liked that better than his teasing. She certainly couldn't decide that now. She was losing time. She ran faster, sprinting as if it were a sports day at school. Her boots clogged with snow and her legs dragged heavier and heavier, but she mustn't slow down. With her heart in her mouth, Ida ploughed on as fast as her legs would let her. She stumbled where the snow was deeper. Her arms sank to her elbows, and she struggled to pick herself up as the plane emerged from the darkness of the hangar. The 3 propeller blades on the plane's nose were thankfully still. The wings spread like a graceful ballet dancer coming towards her, then turning to face the runway. Uncle Arthur, in his smart coat belted round his middle, marched towards it. With one hand he lowered the peak of his hat, and with the other he clamped round Bonnie's arm. Ida's heart leapt when she saw her sister. Bonnie, I'm coming! Bonnie, in a new red coat, her hands hidden in a muff and her blonde curls in a woolen pixie hat buttoned under her chin, trotted behind him. As soon as Bonnie saw Ida, she tried to yank her arm away from Uncle Arthur. Di, you're here! Her little voice was clear as a bird in the morning air. But Uncle Arthur's grip was firm. He picked her up and clamped her to his chest. If he was surprised to see Ida, he didn't show it. Bonnie squirmed and struggled in his arms to make him let go. I want to get down, Uncle Arthur, I want Da! But he ran with Bonnie to where the plane was waiting, up the steps and into the aeroplane like she was a doll under his arm. Ida ran, waving and shouting, It's all right, Bonnie, I'm here! Ida left the foot-clogging snow and stepped onto the runway, where she felt solid tarmac underneath the white icing. Thank goodness the aeroplane door was still open. Bonnie, I'm here! Her voice was hoarse and her chest heaved, but she was so close she couldn't stop now. Ida grabbed the handrail. The metal was so cold her skin stuck to it. I'm here! But Bonnie and Uncle Arthur had disappeared into the plane, and through the open door Ida could only see a black hole. Please don't close the door, not yet, please! She pulled herself up the steps. Uncle Arthur appeared on the top step, his black boots glossy to his knees, his black shirt buttoned to the neck and his hair flattened with grease. One arm was hidden inside the plane. He towered over her. Give up, Ida. You know you can't give your sister the opportunities that I can. I don't want to go without you. Bonnie's voice came from somewhere inside the plane. Where is she? In her seat, ready for the flight. Let me see her. Ida tried to push past him. His clothes smelt shop new. Uncle Arthur grabbed her shoulder and held her outside. His hidden arm now swung into view. Like a deadly pendulum with his finger curled round the trigger, he pointed a gun at Ida's head. Ida felt the end of the cold, hard barrel hover in her hair. She froze on the steps. For all Ida knew, who was going to fire it. I told you, Ida, give up. She's mine now. His aim was steady. Then let me come too. Her fingers curled tight round the freezing handrail. All her hope tingled in that grip. Do you know, I was going to invite you to come. You have shown some useful courage getting here, and originally I was curious about how you might fare with your contemporaries in the fatherland, but on second thoughts, not that curious. You do not have your sister's qualities. He waved the gun. Get off my plane before my finger gives in. I haven't fired this old service pistol for 17 years, and I'd like to see if it still works. Ida breathed in courage. She wasn't going anywhere. She felt her chest rise and fill with breath. She was strong. She would push him out the way. She'd push harder this time, grab Bonnie and run. She lifted her head against the steel barrel and looked Uncle Arthur in the eye. The fire in his eyes burned dangerously. He held the gun steady. I'm coming for you, Bonnie. She was ready. She was going. But another man appeared behind Uncle Arthur. We need to go, sir, before the weather changes again. Uncle Arthur lowered the gun. Now was her moment. One deep breath. Something for the flight, sir. The man, not as tall as Uncle Arthur, but in the same uniform, offered him a glass, sparkling like diamonds with a honey-coloured liquid inside it. He spoke to Uncle Arthur, but glanced at Ida. It was Harry. Reformed Harry, really? Harry, who said he'd changed his mind about being a Blackshirt. Time to go, sir. It's not a long trip. Your inbuilt compass will let you know where we're going. Harry glanced at Ida again as Uncle Arthur took a sip. Of the honey-coloured liquid. In that second, Harry's eyes connected with Ida's as if they were at either end of a telephone. Uncle Arthur weighed the gun in his other hand and resumed his aim at Ida's head. She felt every muscle in her body turn to cold, hard, dead iron. She breathed in and out from her throat. Her mouth wanted to form the words she'd been crying at Underwood's, across the airfield, on the steps of the plane. "Bonnie, I'm coming!" But she had no voice. Harry was still there, behind Uncle Arthur, waiting for him. Or was he waiting for her? "No, take some mercy and live your little life, Ida, what there is of it." Uncle Arthur dropped his aim. "When the glory of the Third Reich touches these shores, it will be over anyway." He lowered his head and disappeared into the plane. Behind Uncle Arthur's back, Harry was mouthing some words, but Ida's head was such a muddle of worry and failure and sadness that she couldn't work out what Harry was trying to say. But there was something he had said just now to Uncle Arthur, and that something made her feel it would be all right. She climbed down the steps. She stood on the icy runway. She wanted to run back up again, push past Harry and snatch that gun off her uncle, who wasn't really an uncle. But Harry kicked the little staircase away and pulled the plane door shut. The aeroplane steps rolled across the tarmac and stopped in the piled-up snow at the edge of the runway. Had she just made another huge mistake? How could it be all right? She ran after the plane as it got into position to take off. If she could just get in its way to stop it. The propeller spun. The engine hum became a rumble. It taxied faster and faster along the runway. The rumble became a roar, and Uncle Arthur, Harry, and Bonnie left the ground. The plane was in the air, a metal bird flying her sister away. A metal bird. That was it. He'd told Uncle Arthur that he had an inbuilt compass, but when they met at the march, he told her that people didn't have them. Her hand shielding her eyes, Ida watched the plane fly higher and higher into the morning sun and disappear into the blue. She was filled with hope. Then behind her, she heard tires skid on the icy tarmac.